Welcome back to Game On. The conversation definitely does continue. We're focusing on football as a whole. But one thing that's quite interesting about this December period is that a lot of the PSL teams will be playing football in a different way. They'll be playing a lot more matches than what we have seen in the past. Shane, I'd like to bring you in here. Number one, as a player, usually in the past you would get a week, 3 weeks off, and you can go home, see the family, enjoy some Christmas pudding. Now you need to focus and you need to play because possibly there are 6 matches on the card that you have to focus on. How does this shift the mentality of the players?
Yeah, it's going to be very difficult for the players. You know, they're not used to it. Overseas they still do it, but yeah, they're not used to it. And it's a new thing, obviously because the African Cup of Nations is coming up. Players have got to just do their job, you know, they've got to be professionals. Forget about the holidays, forget about Christmas, forget about New Year, forget about all of that. It's got to be focused on your game, focus on your team, and focus on everything football. The holidays, you can have a next one next year. Don't worry about that. So it's not going to go away, it's always there. But it's going to be a bit different for them. Players are not used to that. As I say, 2 weeks break, the guys go off and have a little bit of a break. Normally what the coaches do, they'll give you a week off over the Christmas period and then bring you straight back into training. But now it's different. Training throughout, get the day off for Christmas, come back in and do the job. You know, there's going to be games on the 23rd, 26th. You've got to be ready and you've got to be focused on that. I want to see what happens. I mean, normally you train the day before, so if the team's playing on the 26th, you've got to be training Christmas Day. You know, you don't know. But for me, it's just another day. You've got to go out there and do the work. You're paid to do a job. You've got to be doing that job.
As a coach, how do you keep the players motivated to focus on the task at hand? Because there might be one or two that misbehave and, you know, indulge in certain things, whether it's the Christmas pudding or other things. How do you put them in line again?
Well, that's very difficult because, you know, as I said, it never happened before, but I had a rule where I used to fine players. If they came back overweight, they used to get fined for it. Simple, I haven't done it because they're not looking after themselves. How much
is the question?
A few rand, and depending on you know, the players or whatever, 1,500 rand a kilogram.
Sure.
But that just made the guys think about it, made the guys, hang on a minute, I need to work while we're in the break. No break this time. But there always are those players that want to overindulge, and you know, you've got to sort it out, you've got to nip it in the bud, and you've got to be putting plans in place. My thing, what I would do, if I'm a coach, I would have tests. I would have a breathalyzer test on the day after Christmas and make sure that those players haven't been overindulging. And if they have been, it's going to be big trouble. But you've got to trust your players. At the end of the day, you know, it's all part and parcel of the game. But yeah, it's going to be a difficult one for coaches this year. I would pick players that I knew wouldn't overindulge. So yeah, different story. But it's a difficult one to call.
After this December period, we are also looking at the AFCON. I know that a lot of European teams have stars, and these are African stars that will be playing in the African Cup of Nations. How do coaches approach the December period with these African stars? Do you play them now to ensure that you collect as many points as possible, and then when they're gone for AFCON, you can slot in some of the B players?
Can't really be doing that because, you know, it's going to be too late then. So you've got to start integrating the other players in. Yeah, play them, start with them, and then maybe start taking them off and bringing other players that you know you're going to use in February, you know, January, February. So you've got to be integrating players in now while you can. But you can't also be weakening your team. So it's a very fine line that what you actually have to do. For me, you've got to play them, but then, as I say, integrate new players in, bring in other players that are going to be playing for you and going to be representing you in that period. It's a difficult one. It's always got to me that they have it at that time of year, but anyway, that's the way the calendar is, you know. So it's always a challenge for teams, especially with a few of those players involved. But you've got to be integrating new players as you go along. So 10 minutes, you have 15 minutes, maybe even a half, you know. So that's the best way to do it.
You talk about integrating players and finding that balance in terms of your squad. Hugo Bruce spoke about it earlier in the week as well, specifically referring to that international break. So we're going to go into a tough season of PSL, lots of football being played in the month of December, and then he might not have enough time to get that Bafana squad ready for the African Cup of Nations. As a coach, how do you handle a situation like that when players have to shift from club football to international football within the space of a week and a half?
you've got to integrate them quick. That's where a good coach is. When you know who are good coaches, they've got a different style of playing. They've got their own way of playing. But having said that, if you look at the majority of his squad are Sundowns players, and they tend to play the Sundowns way, which is a very good thing. We saw in the second half against Rwanda, that's how they played. So it's not really hard to integrate them. It's just the injuries that are a big worry. But it's not very difficult to change things around. You don't need a lot of time, and that's the job of an international coach. You've got to be sharp on your feet. You've got to turn things around very quickly, but I'm sure he will. He's a very experienced coach.
Well, certainly. Let's shift our attention quickly to the Bundesliga, a team that a lot of people have been concerned about. I know it's a team that you've been watching quite closely, Borussia Dortmund. What do they have to do this weekend as they take on Mönchengladbach in this particular game that is very important because they have dropped a lot of points this season?
One. Doesn't matter if it's a 1-0 win, a 2-0, 2-1, whatever, just one. If it's ugly, whatever, just one. They went through a very bad patch. It's if you look at the league, they were always the ones chasing Bayern and putting Bayern under pressure. Generally, they're always there, but they have gone through a bad spell. International break came at a very, very good time for them. Time to refresh, time to get their players charged up again. They just need to win. Doesn't matter how they win, doesn't matter how many they win by, just get that result, and move on from there.
Shayna said it is Borussia Dortmund that need a victory this weekend. Of course, we're wishing them all the best, but the conversation does continue on our social media platforms, and we would love for you to be a part of it. Thank you so much for joining us yet again on Game On.